Well, hey there, everybody. Greetings and salutations, and welcome back, because it is time for our The Last of Us, Episode 6, open spoiler Aftershow, where we're going to talk about Episode 6 of The Last of Us, but in a totally open, spoilery way. So if you have not seen Episode 6 of The Last of Us yet, just be prepared. Maybe come back to this a little bit later, or buckle in and join us as we go. I'm joined by Robert Meyer Burnett and, of course, Chris Carr, and we are talking about The Last of Us Episode 6, and let's just dive right into it, because this series so far we're 6 episodes in now. I keep waiting for the week episode to happen. The Best of Shows has it. And I keep waiting for the week episode to happen. It has not come. This episode keeps continuing to turn out banger after banger after banger. I talked a little bit earlier today about the fact that this is a show that continues to, like in MMA terms, keeps changing levels, right? Each episode is a beautiful through thread of one story, and yet it kind of changes dynamics every time. And whether it's like escaping from a QZ, or whether it's running into a bunch of not so well-intentioned humans, or whether it's a standalone love story in the midst of a post-apocalyptic world, or whatever, they keep doing this and then breaking our hearts into a million little pieces after the introduction, of course, Henry and Sam. And so maybe this will be the episode. Nope. It still turned out, I think it turned out to be my favorite episode of the season so far, with last night's episode. Anyway, before we get into the specifics and everything, Rob, what were your general impressions of the episode last night?
Like I was saying this morning, I think it's one of the great cinematic adaptations of all time. I mean, of any story translated into another medium, because, a video game does exist, as you've pointed out many times on the show, to play. It's right. A game, and the story is there to serve the gameplay. And the thing is, The Last of Us had already an incredibly emotional story, but you don't get to play the game when you're watching a narrative. So they have to figure out, okay, that gameplay carries you through. So you go from one emotional cutscene to the next, but you can't do that on a TV show. You have to give them a narrative, like how do they get from one place to the other? And so what might take an hour and a half during a gameplay, like when you're in the museum, to clear the museum to get the hell out from the clickers, they can't do it like that. So they have to make you care, because these characters are on camera 24/7 and they're not just breaking into action scenes. So that's a really hard thing to do. And John, I think that they've nailed it. I mean, what they've done is they've leaned into the game, in the sense they can't have the action scene, so they've leaned into the emotion. They've leaned into the characters. And I have to say, one of the scenes that got me yesterday was when Joel sees Tommy. He
sees his brother for the first time.
And I was like, there was such joy, and it was like a 1-2 whammy when they first see each other and run to each other, and they embrace, they stop, and then they embrace again. And I'm like, I barely know this dude. I saw him once in the beginning and to see the way Diego Luna and Pedro Pascal played that moment, just that moment. And then it just went from there. It got more emotional to watch the scene between Joel and Tommy when Joel unloads and unburdens himself. I was blown away by the acting and by the kind of relationship that they have. And, I really felt this dynamic, like Joel's trying to play, I'm your brother. Okay, so disrupt this life that you've made in this horrible post-cordyceps world and come with me and do what I want, because I'm your brother. I mean, and Tom, no, I'm not going to do that. And this dude, it's tough to create this kind of emotion on a show, especially about zombie fungus.
You know what was really good about that scene, though, when Joel and Tommy see each other? You have two brothers who haven't seen each other in a long time. They didn't end previously on the best of terms. And so they see each other, and it has to be really emotional. But here's one of the other key things to that scene, is that Diego Luna and Pedro Pascal each had to play it differently. Because while Pedro Pascal, we've been following along with Pedro Pascal now into 6 episodes as he's looking for his brother, and he's searching for his brother, trying to find his brother. And now it's a culmination of that search. Gabriel Luna. Thank you. The brother of Diego Luna. Sorry.
Yeah.
Gabriel Luna, on the other hand, he had to play it with all the emotion, but he had to play completely differently, because this was a shock to him.
Right.
Like he looks up, he hears Tommy, and he looks up, and he has to portray not just that joy in whatever scene, but it's got to be hit him as a complete surprise. And so when you look at Pascal's face or Luna's face, thrilled, heartwarming, all that kind of stuff, but one of I found you, and the other of what the hell are you doing here? And they played it, so they played it exactly the same and yet completely differently at the same time. It was awesome. Anyway, Chris, you watched the episode. What were your kind of general impressions of it?
Oh man, I love these very humanistic episodes. They're really, really great when it is the just character building episodes. And it's also a nice palate cleanser because I feel like every other episode I'm sobbing uncontrollably. So it's really nice when you get a little bit of respite from that. Although this was a really emotional one. And I think the thing that really stood out to me the most, and Rob and you and I were talking about this off camera because of the after show they do on it, is that so iconic scene that they just nailed of Ellie and Joel talking to one another.
Yeah.
You know, that bedroom scene is beat for beat what you get in the game. It's so well done. It's still so emotional. It felt, I don't know, even having gone through it in the game, even having my students watch it and like work on that scene, I was so moved with how they did it. It was so well done. I thought everything in this episode was great. Seeing how this town worked, seeing how communism was working for these folks. I loved that bit of, no, it's communism. And, you know,
This is a commune. It's
Tommy's face just being
communism.
like, oh.
Well,
I
he
thought it
even
was
says
great.
that at the beginning. There were two different
Yeah.
kinds of civilizations. I love that. And then they find the commies.
It was all so good. And then the building we have too of just, you know, Ellie and Joel building more trust with each other, making the contractor jokes and everything. But I think one of the things that is getting overlooked too is how well Pedro Pascal played those moments of anxiety attacks. It's
Yeah.
really, really well
Yeah.
done. And if you've ever had the misfortune of having one or being around somebody who has them, I mean, you do just lock up like that and freeze. And even the sound mixing on that of having that high pitched noise come in, it's so well executed on this. And I just really, really loved it. There's just one thing that bugged me in this episode.
Oh yeah, what was that?
At the end, when he gets shivved, you keep that shit in there, Joel. You're going to buy yourself 5 more hours. Why would you take it out? What? Why? I know it's more dramatic for television, but I was so mad. Everyone I was watching it with, we narrowed it down. We used to have a big group, and now it's just 4 of us who watched it this time, so we all didn't cry in front of strangers. Like, we all were so annoyed because he has, you know, got a military background. He's been living in this world. Why would you take out the thing? Even I know that if you get stabbed, you leave it in.
He needs to watch Crisis Medicine.
Yeah.
I think though, there are 2 reasons I kind of let that go. One is, it's one thing maybe in your head to know that. But when you look down and you have a knife or a shiv or a branch or whatever penetrating your abdominal wall, you're not thinking right there. Like your probably first thought is to take that thing out, right?
Yeah.
You're probably not thinking completely straight, all kinds of stuff. The other thing I try to rationalize is maybe because it wasn't really a knife, he looked at it and figured, who knows how
Might
this
not
is
be as
infecting
deep
my
as it
blood?
is, yeah.
Maybe I need to get it. I don't know.
Listen, I can suspend my disbelief for mushroom zombies, but pulling out that thing.
That is just a non-negotiable factor. I'll tell you though, about like you pointed out that one thing about, you know, the panic attacks. That's the part to me that really made this maybe my favorite one, because in this episode, and I mentioned this earlier today, where, you know, we see our protagonists often in these stories as being very strong, invulnerable, standing up against great odds. But we are reminded of 2 things in this. Number one, that Joel is very, very human. And he has the frailties of a human. And a human who has been facing an unspeakable dimension of stress, an unspeakable dimension of suffering, an unspeakable dimension of endurance that he's had to face. And he's shown that as a human being, he will unfortunately, you know, have reactions to that. The second thing that I thought was great in connection with the panic attacks and everything is that we are reminded once again that Joel is a broken man. And we sometimes forget that, I think, as an audience, because Joel is trying to make people around him not know it. So, but at the end of the day, he is still an extremely broken man. And I think that brokenness that he's never been able to recover from or move on from or come to terms with the loss of his daughter is becoming more pronounced the closer and closer his relationship to Ellie gets. And as that relation gets closer and closer, his inherent fear of failing her like he believes he failed his daughter come to the surface. I love that conversation that he had with his brother too, because when he's telling his brother and he can't hold back his own tears, he goes, I'm weak and I'm whatever. And like, you want to reach through the towels and say, you're not weak, man. You're human. You're experiencing something anybody in the world would go through if they had faced 1/10 of the stuff that you have faced. And like, I just, my heart was breaking. And just the fact that we're seeing this character kind of the self-reflection and the consequences of not just things that happened in this episode, but all the events of the previous episodes, right? That were leading up to that. Like, she saved me because I was too deaf to hear a guy coming up. It's like, dude, you're in the middle of a firefight and somebody got the drop on you. Like, cut yourself some slack. But man, like that portrayal, I think, Chris, you said earlier today, I loved your phrasing of, you said, this was Pedro Pascal building his Emmy campaign.
Yeah.
It so is.
Yeah,
It so completely is. And that's why, to me, this thing was just amazing.
There's one thing I do want to say that I found delightful, and that was the opening scene of this episode, not the replay of the end of last episode, but I mean with Graham Greene and his wife.
I love seeing a good Canadian
So
kid, by the
great
way. It's
to
great
see
seeing
him.
Graham Greene
I
on
mean,
there.
he goes all the way back to Dances with Wolves. He was in Die Hard with a Vengeance. We talked about that today. That scene was delightful. He was great in it. His wife was great in it. And I thought that was a great way to start the episode because it actually put a smile on my face. And I was like, that's nice. I thought it was good. And then Ellie steals one of the rabbits. And I love that scene.
Yeah, I loved how amused they were with everything.
I
It
know
was
they were,
great.
they're like, it was so funny.
Oh, and also, y'all, I misspoke. It's Tommy who's the one who has all the military training. I think in my brain playing the game because Joel can just like snap people's necks with one arm. I was like, of course he was in the military. That makes sense to me. He's so strong. My bad.
But it was Joel's truck that has the military
That's
bumper
what I
sticker.
thought. But people in the chat are telling me it's Tommy who is the military guy.
I think
don't
they
know.
both are.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Because I
but-
mean, like with the truck having the bumper, I think they're saying, and I to be honest with you, I don't remember what Joel's background was in the game, but I think the implication in the show is that Joel also and Tommy
That's
had
what they
that.
made it seem
I
like.
gathered that from several of their conversations and the bumper
they're saying
sticker.
it's Tommy's truck. I don't know.
I'm seeing some people like in the thing they both had that training. I don't know. My interpretation of it was that he did have that training as well. That they
I
were
did too.
there because when Tommy's also talking to him about the gun and the scope and all that kind of stuff, in this episode, he's talking that Joel. He's talking as if Joel will totally understand what I'm saying. That this, and this. So
Well, never
don't know.
mind. My mistake was thinking I was wrong.
I think we'll have to wait and see what Mason or whatever says about that. But regardless of that, anyway, Chris, as we look back at the episode too, what were maybe some of the other standout moments for you that really stayed with you after the episode was done?
I mean, the Diva Cup. We got to talk about the Diva Cup. It just made so much sense in that world, and it was done so funny. Of just freaky. All right, but in a post-apocalyptic world, where like they've had her go, off on her own to try to find tampons and everything. Having that kind of common sense, you need to have these things stuff in there does help with the world building. And I thought it was done in a really funny way. I really enjoyed too, just the dynamics of that town. I thought it was really, really interesting just to see how they were all working, how they have these communal movie nights, how they all do a bartering system for their work, to see how they have a council. And now this woman who used to be a lawyer now is helping run this town with a whole other team of folks, how they, made that little plaque for Sarah and for her child too that she lost. I thought that was really, really beautiful and such a wonderful way for Ellie to be able to question, who Sarah was to Joel and everything. I thought that was beautifully done on this. Really enjoyed her. She's a very interesting character.
She's great.
Yeah, and I bought into it right away. They helped me buy into it right away. Anyway, Rob, what were some of the other moments for you that kind of stood out to you in the episode?
Speaking of her, I love the idea of just getting a haircut.
Yeah.
Taking bringing some normalcy to this world. And Ellie was like, haircut. It's like I won't go too short. Like suddenly fashion matters, but I really did enjoy that. I love when she said, what is this eggplant jacket? She's not thinking like suddenly she's not thinking about how utilitarian it might be, but that it looks fun. It was a great looking jacket. But I have to say, I really think that it was that whole town the way it was portrayed in the after show, like they built the stable they walk through with all the animals. In the actual town they shot in, that was like a parking lot in the middle of the town. You know, they turned it into these stables, and they really made you believe that this was I believe that this functioning oasis existed. And I guess because I'm used to, I just kept waiting for, and I was like, did this happen in the game? Do they suddenly get besieged by evil raiders or cordyceps people? And then that's not what the episode was about. I'm like, if they don't, so that's good. But I kept, every time I watch this show, I'm just waiting for something horrible to happen all the time. And what was horrible about this episode was the emotional turmoil that you see that Joel's been going through. And overall, and I have to tell you, dude, when they were walking through the campus, the college campus at the end,
right?
I was, just because I'm used to, I was literally like, even though I kind of knew, I knew what was kind of coming, I was still like, because it's an adaptation, are they going to change it? You know, and because he seems so like nonchalant. Here we are in this there's buildings everywhere. I'm like, dude, there could be people anywhere in these buildings. You're just like walking through on the horseback. But it was, and I did get startled. The monkey thing startled me, you know, just because I was tense. But this was a wonderful episode, and I love the fact that you really got a sense of the journey. Like you know what I loved? I loved seeing the hydroelectric plant.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know why, you know, it's like that used to generate electricity, you know, and I don't know if they use special effects to make it look. I thought it was a real hydroelectric plant, but to see it, like to see those locations.
By the way, just when they come across it in here, it's such a simple joke. Just say, damn. Like
yeah.
that was pretty funny.
It was pretty funny. It was another dad joke from the book. But these shots, even when they walked over the bridge, you know, they had I don't know if it was a drone shot from high up looking straight down. They had distant vista shots just with them walking across. This was stunningly beautiful cinematography. It was really well done.
By the way, am I the only person who kind of felt like, and this would only be applicable to people who have played the second game, but in the cafeteria as they're eating and he's telling about her manners, like, well, what about her manners? What are you looking at? There was a girl looking.
Yeah.
I think that was a little bit of foreshadowing to something that comes in the last. Again, just for the sake of people who have not played the second game, I think there was a very, very significant first contact in that scene. And again,
Oh, you mean girl?
Yes,
dude.
Who she's looking at says, "Who are you looking at?"
Totally.
Yeah, I think that was a little bit of foreshadowing.
Totally. 100%. Because there was a little look back and forth.
Yeah. And again, there was just a little bit of similarity between a certain character in the second game.
I totally am right there with you. I think that's absolutely intentional.
So I wonder about that. But you know, the funny thing is, as a longtime World of Warcraft player, right? And whenever I would play the game, there is a very, very, oh, thank God moment that comes when you are finally able to get your mount. You're able to get a horse. Because in World of Warcraft, you spend a lot of time just walking from zone to zone, and that can be very frustrating. And when you finally get your horse, like you're like, and whenever you started the game again, you're like, okay, just got to get to a point when I can finally get my mount, blah, blah, blah. I felt that because we've been through all these episodes, and just the fact that they were able to get on a horse, you just, even as a viewer, I'm like, okay, the world is much better for them now.
Yeah.
Just because they have a horse, or just because he has some duct tape, or just because they have a new coat, right? They're doing a really good job of making you feel that these little creature comfort sort of things that come around are actually world changing in a world like this. I think they're doing a great job.
Ellie wringing out her hair after the shower.
Yes.
With the towel, you know, just wringing out. When was the last time she did that?
Mm-hmm.
Loved it.
I going back to like when they enter the town as well, we talked about the reaction between Tommy and Joel seeing each other. I loved Ellie's reaction just to seeing the town.
Yep.
Because this is a type of society she had never in her life been able to conceive of, let alone actually see. And that was, I think, very different from her, especially when you fast forward and you look at the next time on The Last of Us, and they show her sitting down like at a Fedra school and being told, you're you're going to follow the rules, and you're going to be an enforcer, and all this kind of stuff. So this was a very, very different kind of world for her to see.
Well, speaking of that, I was like, they're watching The Goodbye Girl. That's
Right.
the movie they're
Yeah.
watching, and I'm like, well, that's pretty interesting. I mean, they could have picked. Was that in the game?
I don't remember it.
I don't remember that.
I thought
Chat,
what
let
a,
us
of
know.
all the movies they could have picked, The Goodbye Girl. I'm like, that there's right then and there they're talking about that movie was an overarching idea behind the whole episode. That was really clever.
Now, by the way, I've seen people today asking, including in our own live chat a little bit earlier, some people were asking, well, why doesn't Tommy just go with Joel? Like, Tommy resigned himself to going, so why does Joel say you got to make a choice to go? I think that was a very clear and obvious thing, because Tommy made it very clear that he couldn't do it. He's got a kid on the way.
Yeah.
And, Joel is telling you, you got to leave, and you can't even tell her. You can't tell your wife. You can't tell her. We just got to go. And so he had determined that since Joel can't go, and this is of vital importance to the future survival of humanity, that he would do it. But I think at the end, when Joel comes to the decision that, okay, I will continue to be a protector, that lets Tommy off the hook.
Yes.
And so to me, that was a very normal, natural thing. I never once pondered the idea that Tommy could still go along with him being, he's about to be a father. The only way he was going to go is if there was absolutely zero other choice. And that's why he agrees to it to Joel in the first place. So when Joel reveals that he will go, that changes things. So I never really thought that was a problem in it.
I don't either, because Joel wouldn't have let Tommy go anyway.
At that point.
Yeah. You're not going.
Especially, and that represents a really interesting turnaround in character development itself, because like earlier he was like, you got to come, you're my brother. So blah, blah. Now he exactly would have been, nope, now I get it. You can't
I
come.
totally agree with you. I think that's exactly what happened.
All right, guys, listen, we are going to take the rest of our show here today to hear from you guys and take your thoughts, theories, opinions, and questions about episode 6 of The Last of Us. Now, before we do, we're going to take just a second and thank a couple of the sponsors of this video today, our friends at the Black Tux and Fume. Hey guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, the Black Tux. It's time we had the talk. You know the one I'm talking about, the one that ends in the 3-letter word. I'm talking about a tux. And when you need a tux, the best place to go to get one is the Black Tux. The Black Tux makes it super easy to get an on-trend, top-quality, guaranteed to fit tux without ever needing to leave your house. So here's how it works. Take the Black Tux fit quiz, pick the style you want to wear, and boom, your tux is delivered to your door 10 days before the day you need it. That's plenty of time to try it on and make sure it wears you well. And hey, if the fit's not quite right, say hello to the Black Tux Fit Guarantee. Order a better size within a day or two of receiving the less than great fitting one, and they'll send another one right away at no extra cost. Their expert fit specialists will help you find the perfect style tux or suit and make sure it fits just right. Listen, I've been dubious in the past about online sites or apps that say they can get your measurements, but the fit quiz with the Black Tux works great. And man, I wish I had had these guys for so many events I've attended over the years. So rent or buy, the Black Tux is the best place to go when you need a tuxedo for a wedding or a special night. And right now, when you go to theblacktux.com/Campea and use the code Campea, you'll save $20 off your order. That's THEBLACKTUX.com/Campea, code Campea to save $20. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of this video, Fume. Be smart. Don't start. Kick the habit. Put it out before it puts you out. All phrases we've heard 100 times, and yet we still continue to have bad habits. Today's sponsor, Fume, is on a mission to accelerate humanity's breakup from the bad habits that consume far too many of us. Fume is a natural diffusive device that uses plants and behavioral science to help you trade out your negative habit for a positive one. You see, Fume is not a vape. It's a non-electronic device designed to transform your negative habits. Because instead of pods filled with potentially harmful chemicals like a vape, Fume uses cores infused with plants like peppermint and cinnamon for delicious natural flavors. And Fume's new version 2 model is snappy and tactile. With an adjustable airflow dial and a magnetic end cap, your fingers will always have something to do. The device itself is really attractive, and once I popped in the core and took my first inhale of it, it tasted fantastic. Guys, the easiest way to stop a bad habit is to switch to a positive one, and Fume is designed to perfectly do just that. So head over to tryfume.com
TJCScrew.com and use the promo code Campea to save 10% off when you get the Journey Pack today. The Journey Pack comes with 3 unique flavors and the new version 2 Fume to help kickstart your positive habits. That's tryfume, TRYFUM.com, and use the code Campea to save an additional 10% off your order today.
And thank you to our friends at the Black Tux and, of course, Fume. All right, guys. With that down, let's get over to your live comments, questions, thoughts, theories, and opinions about this new episode of The Last of Us. So, Chris, what do we got in there?
From JICSC, one of two, I'm someone who didn't like The Last of Us 2's story. I found that the narrative structure and pacing disconnected me from the characters and themes. But as the TV series has been a great adaptation to a different medium, I'm excited for when they adapt part 2. It may resonate better for me.
That's interesting. Like, again, I know there was some divisiveness, but again, Last of Us Part 2 did, I believe, won Game of the Year. I think it might have set a new record for how many awards it won. I might be off about that a little bit. I personally found the story of episode 2 to be the superior of the 2 stories. Now, granted, part of that is because it builds on what is established in part 1, right? Like, on its own, it can't exist on its own. It's meant as a follow-up to part 1, but I actually thought the story in part 2 was even more humanly resonant, emotionally satisfying. It looks at a darker part of who we are, but again, it takes that theme of what pain does to people and multiplies it by 10.
Yeah.
Moving forward. So I mean, but hey, they're both great stories. And if the second one didn't work for you as well, I'm really looking forward to what Mason and Druckmann do with the second season. All right, what's next?
From Svein, 86, I would 100% watch a spinoff show with the couple from the opening scene. Hell yeah.
Me too.
Oh
great.
my God. I loved that scene.
Yep.
It was just so good. And there's like, I especially love doing a great job hiding. So hiding. I've been here since before you were born, Sonny. And it's just like, these are 2 people who don't give an F. It's just like, because once he kind of figured, okay, you're not shooting us, well then whatever. I don't really care.
You made him some soup?
It would be an interesting show because apparently nobody else would be in it. It
Right.
would literally just be the 2 of them.
Well, they could just just deliver philosophical observations about life.
Yep.
As they ate things that he hunted for.
I would be there for it. Mm-hmm. All right, what's next?
From Sam Fisher, I hope we see the rabbit scene in episode 7 or 8.
I'm trying to remember the rabbit scene. I can't remember it off the top of my head, to be honest. Now, granted, it's been several years since I watched the walkthrough of Last of Us Part 1, but I do not remember a rabbit scene. Like, if you mentioned to me the Space Museum scene, I know exactly the one you're talking about. If you're talking about the dance scene, I totally remember that one, but I do not recall the rabbit scene, to be honest. All right, what's next?
From Just a Sub 32, really glad they put a scene where Maria told Ellie about Sarah. I always wondered what her initial reaction was when playing the game.
I loved that her reaction was much like what I thought the reaction should be. Huh. Well, that explains a lot about him. I just thought it was perfect, subtle, to the point. Again, lesser writers could have written some big, long 5-minute scene about her piecing it together and talking it out loud, but all she has to say is the one look on her face, and then, well, that explains a lot. And it was just, Rob, I think once you pointed out the efficiency at which this show goes about its storytelling, and I think that's a great example of it.
It's a great example of it. And they do that a lot, and I don't think it's getting enough credit. I think people, because so many people, especially people who are big fans of the game, they want those game touchstones, and when they see something that deviates from the game, and it has to because it's a different medium,
right?
Then people are like, "Whoa!" But I think if you watch it for what it is, it's an incredible story, and the fact that, like you said, how many bangers do they deliver? We're going to get 9 episodes, 10 if you include the first 2 strung together. This is some incredible television, and if you can equate it, I never thought I'd be getting whatever the Last of Us version is of Chernobyl in terms of how good it was, but we're getting it.
Yeah.
We're getting it. And it's so well thought out.
All right, what's next?
From Walter Whitewalker, planting seeds for musical Joel broke my heart.
Yeah, because when she says that, you know something. Well, I mean, people who've played the games know what's coming too. And you know what? Seeing that took me back to, I remember watching footage of when they first announced The Last of Us Part 2. And they announced it with that little teaser trailer of Ellie playing the guitar. And Joel shows up in the door. I don't know why, but when I was watching that scene unfold, it just reminded me of that first teaser of The Last of Us Part 2. All right, what's next?
From just a sub 32, I love that Joel and Tommy hugged each other after so many years. They may have had a falling out, but you don't go back on family.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's the thing about family, right? There's a universal truth in that. You can be angry at your family. You can be frustrated at your family. There might be somebody that there's nobody else in the world that drives you as nuts as somebody in your family, but at the end of the day, they're family. And while there are certainly extreme exceptions to that, yes, I mean, I just found that so beautiful and touching. Great. And then the realness of it continued, where it's like they are so happy to see each other, but the tendencies that would drive you crazy about each other soon came up again between Tommy and Joel. And I love the fact that they didn't, retreat from that. I thought that was great.
Well, that one shitty line too of "We'll see. We'll see. We'll see if I'm going to be a good dad."
Oh.
Ooh. So good.
Oh. All right. What's next?
From Walter White Walker again. Game of Thrones, Last of Us. Should we be worried about Pedro's face in The Mandalorian? Fate, I assume. We don't need to be worried about his face, honey.
Yeah. Again, we shouldn't go into any details about what could be coming into season 2 or what may not be coming into season 2. But listen, when Pedro Pascal does a TV show, it turns out you are in for a great time, regardless of what he does, because he's doing okay. His TV career is doing just fine.
Not doing bad.
All right, what's next?
From Mike's Movie Madness, sending a $20 super chat.
Thank you, Mike.
This show never ceases to amaze. The writing is just top tier, and the acting is phenomenal. Just mail Pedro and Bella their Emmys now. It's for sure tied between this episode and episode 3 for Best Writing Emmy, in my opinion.
I mean, we were talking this morning. I mentioned that I think this might be my favorite episode because it is such a character development episode with Joel, his humanity, his brokenness. Chris very rightly brought up episode 3 with Frank and Bill, which is, I think, one of the best episodes of television we've had in a long time. But I mean, woo, and there's still more episodes to come.
I mean, I don't know how the Emmys work, but Nick Offerman would be best guest star in a supporting. I mean, how would? Yeah,
there is a specific. I can't remember the exact category. Chris, maybe you can look up what's the name of that category.
It wouldn't.
There is a category for a guest star.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be Pedro Pascal going up against Nick Offerman for best actor.
No, Nick Offerman popping up in one episode, he wouldn't qualify for best actor.
Outstanding guest actor.
Yeah,
in a mini series or a limited series or something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, well, this isn't a limited series, so.
Right.
But listen, at this point, they literally can just, hey, do we got those Emmys there? Yeah, just start engraving Nick Offerman's name on it now, because I don't see how anybody beats that. That was just insane. All right, what's next?
From Brandon, that girl spying on Ellie was totally Dina, right?
Again, we're not going to go into any details. I will just say that was my first thought. And there did seem to be a little bit of similarity, but I mean, it was such a quick motion blurring kind of moment, but I think it was.
But they put it in there.
But they did put it there.
They didn't have to.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, look at that.
All right, what's next?
From Walter Whitewacker again. I'm gonna love this series for a long, long time.
Is that a reference to something?
The song?
The song. Isn't it the song?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
From Zach Larson, it was nice to see that even in a world full of infected and chaos, movies still bring people together. Any idea what movie they were watching?
Goodbye Girl.
Yeah, and I mean, being the person I am, I loved that. Because I think that's true of life. I think movies is the thing that can bring people together. I mean, it's just a great thing. I love the fact that they founded a community that was able, and I love the fact that she started to go through the process. First we had this, then we did this. And I love what Tommy says later on, like, pretty soon we're going to have bacon, and then that's it. Like we've hit the pinnacle of civilization.
Well, and it's so funny because The Goodbye Girl is about Richard Dreyfuss making friends with a young girl that's the daughter of Marsha Mason. what's her, Quinn, that girl. I follow her on Twitter. I'm drawing a blank on her last name. My mom took me to see that movie when it first came out.
Aw.
But yeah, I love that, we just saw the little details as they went through the town of the things that, in that world, all
Cummings.
this would be taken for granted. And I love that the fact, and when they had the movie night, everybody was there. I love that.
It's great.
All right, what's next?
A long, long time is the reference to the song from episode 3, the Linda Ronstadt song.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
From Zach Larson again. The dog scene had me on the edge of my seat.
Oh, dude.
Oh, I mentioned that this morning. It's like I
Yeah.
said, there's a scene between Ellie, not to give anything away, so I said between Ellie and a puppy. I could not believe how stressed I was at that moment. And I'm kind of surprised that the dog couldn't smell anything because the Fedra tester did register as being infected. So there obviously is, obviously Ellie is a very biologically very special case, very special person, but I was expecting something to happen there. Despite what goes on in the game, I was kind of expecting something to go on there. And oh my God, the tension in that scene was crazy. So good.
And the way they played it, and then she's on the ground scritching his neck. Oh, you're a good boy.
I love that.
Sweet little pupper.
All right, what's next?
From Daniel Luna. Hi, guys. We've seen Joel's hearing come into play. What if later on, as he's getting old to a certain, getting told a certain something about Ellie, he misinterprets what he hears and all hell breaks loose?
I'm assuming I might be wrong. I'm assuming you're talking about something significant about Ellie, and
Yeah, I think he's saying that when he hears somebody says something about, I don't want to give spoilers.
Maybe
Yeah.
if we're talking about the same thing, and I don't know if we are, but maybe. All right, what's next?
From Canada Rocks.
There we go.
Loved the look on Tommy's face. A good old boy from Texas. He's from Austin. When he realizes he is now a communist. This show is surprisingly funny. Yeah,
It is.
Gabriel's from Austin.
That's right. Like when she says that, she says, we are communists. This is a commune. We are communists. And the look on his face is kind of like, oh, damn. Like this is a communist society we've set up here. That was kind of precious. That was really, really well done. All right, what's next?
From Just a Sub 32, mentioning Sarah was a pivotal moment for Joel. It was probably the first time he heard her name in 20 years, as he was never able to get past her death. We see Ellie help to restore his humanity.
You know, it was really very, very different in a traditional scene like that, where a protagonist has a point of pain that gets brought up and they say, don't. Like that, we've seen that scene. We've seen that scene in other shows and movies where the protagonist has a particular point of pain. It gets brought up and say, don't talk about it, don't mention her name, blah. That usually, traditionally, in a movie or TV show that uses that trope, represents the end of the discussion. But not for Ellie. That only increases Ellie's irritation with the situation. And when she approaches, she shoves him like she's like a physical manifestation of her frustration and irritation with that. And you could tell as an audience member, that took me back because you don't normally see that play out in tropes like this. And I love how Pedro Pascal played it too, because it also shook him loose a little bit. So then he falls back to the pride thing, come morning, we're going our separate ways. And but clearly that affected him. And I adored that scene. I thought that was fantastic.
Agreed.
All right, what's next?
From Daniel Vaccara, does Joel sing this season, and what does he sing? He can't do Future Days now since that song came out in 2013. I'm guessing Take On Me in a season 2?
Well, why couldn't he? Because what year is it now in the game?
I think it's our year. It's 2023.
So, I mean, it would be a little bit of playing with, so this song got written post-apocalypse and came out? Hey, listen. They still have not explained to me how there are still rolls of duct tape around after 20 years after the fall of humanity, right? There are still batteries for flashlights.
Or Chef Boyardee.
Or still remaining cans of Chef Boyardee, right? Explaining how this song came to be would be the least of their problems, I think. So, I mean, they could. I'm not saying they will, but I still think the door is open that they could. All right, what's next?
From Chase the Sunrise and Sunsets, best episode of the season for me, my heart ached.
Again, it will all depend on which types of elements and things strike you the most significantly, right? Because I still think maybe the best, this is where I'm talking about, sometimes we make a differentiation in our heads between what is best and what is our favorite, when really maybe we shouldn't. But if I were to, I would almost still say that episode 3 was probably the best episode, but this is the one that affected me the most. You know, just again, seeing the breaking of Joel, the reminders that even our heroes are human and can be broken, and every individual can only take so much before the cracks start to show. And that having those weaknesses and having that brokenness does not necessarily make you weak, despite the fact what Joel thinks. So yeah, again, I think for me, it was my favorite episode, but man, it's hard to get past episode 3. I mean, that was just superior. All right, what's next?
From Svein86, sending in a $20 super chat. Thank you. In the game, the university contained one of my favorite parts of the game, where Ellie has to get an injured Joel out of the university. Sad that this part was so short in the show, but still an awesome episode.
This is one of those great examples, though, where it did not have to be the way you remembered it to still be incredibly effective. Because, you know, as I'm watching with people who haven't seen the episode before, it was still incredibly effective.
Yeah.
Like it got it all right there. And Rob, you've pointed out many times about this show is that you can't play it out like the game. You can take certain elements and do certain things, but at the same time, like for them to get the actual emotional and narrative purpose out of, you know, Joel getting injured and all that kind of stuff, it didn't need to be any longer than what they did. And it worked and it flowed without, and again, I get it. When you're used to playing the game and you saw it play out a certain way, that's kind of the way your head and your heart want to see it play out exactly that same way. But I actually thought this was the more efficient way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, this is where gameplay comes in, you know, and because you're doing all these things, whether you're evading somebody or shooting at somebody, that becomes engaging. You can't watch that as a narrative. You know, after 30 seconds, you're like bored. You know, let's get to the next thing. Okay, where are we going? And it's not like you're going to watch a 20-minute Road Warrior chase when she gets out with Joel from the. You can't do that. And that's, I think, the difference. And that's the difference between watching a narrative TV show or a movie and playing a game.
All right.
But they've done a great job identifying these points.
Yes, they have.
That's the thing that's key.
All right. By the way, Canned Reaction Live Chat saying canned goods can basically last decades as long as it's not damaged. Yeah, that's not the problem I have with them still having Chef Boyardee. The problem is how much Chef Boyardee was sitting around that 20 years of it is still just readily available. I mean, that's a question they haven't really addressed, but that's fine. That's fine. All right, what's next?
From Zach Larson, it was sad to see Tommy gain everything Joel lost.
Yeah, like, and you kind of felt, you know what? It
Well said.
reminded me of a scene in this past seasons of Yellowstone when Beth finds out that her adoptive brother is going to have a baby when she clearly cannot. And there was a bit of that. So as I'm watching this scene and Joel's trying to, you know what? It was a dick thing to say, though we'll see. But when you understand that represents the biggest trauma in his life, I thought Joel had it together pretty well. I mean, all things considered, right?
Yeah.
Like the whole thing, actually, it's not just the biggest trauma in his life. It has been the single biggest defining moment of Joel's life was losing his daughter. And now having found his brother, who was also there when his Sarah died, hearing you're now going to be a father, I mean, he's trying to process. I think in that moment, Joel is trying to process a lot of emotions. And sometimes when we're in that spot, we don't, you know what it reminds me of? When, and they play this in a lot of movies and TV shows, like when a guy finds out he's going to be a dad. It's like that moment, I have not had that moment, but that moment must have a lot of different thoughts and you know, situations and whatever running through your head at the same time. And how you physically first respond to it, and the first thing you say does not necessarily reflect how you actually feel about it. It's just that all of a sudden you're hit with a world of emotions, conflicting emotions about fear, anxiety, hope, joy, whatever, all at once, that you can't hold that against them. And that's why in that moment, I didn't really hold that against Joel, but I could see why Tommy would have been so totally pissed at what Joel said. I got that. I totally did. All right, what's next?
From Mr. Subtlemouth, sending in a $24 super
Oh,
chat.
thank you, Mr. Subtlemouth. Appreciate that, man.
Setting the episode in Jackson instead of the hydroelectric facility like the game was a great decision, laying groundwork for part 2 by establishing the town and the people there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big, big key thing. Like as soon as they saw the dam too, And that's just now I can't remember. Was it in game one? Sometimes the details cross over for me. Was it in game one or game two where there's actually a part of the game where you got to go and get the hydro plant up and running again? I just can't remember if that was in part one or part two.
I mostly watched cutscenes. I got to a certain point in the game, and then it was too stressful for me to play. And so I'm not sure.
People in the live chat are saying that's game one. Yeah, but as soon as you saw that dam and just we're seeing electricity. Like,
right?
This is magical. This is incredible. All right, thank you so much for that, man. Appreciate that. All right, what's next?
From Daniel Vacara again, this week was Pedro Pascal's Emmy submission. Next week is Bella Ramsey's submission with Left Behind. It's just a very well-written and acted show.
And how Stormy Reed, the actress, I like her a lot.
Yeah.
Even though I wasn't a big fan of the movie A Wrinkle in Time, like she was great. And it's like, okay, we're gonna have to keep our eyes on her for a long time.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be very, very exciting. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be interesting too. Again, for those of you who know, you know, how does this show hold up without Joel? It's going to be interesting to see that for that episode next week.
That's interesting. I'll be curious.
It's
I
almost like a
think it
little
will
test run.
though, because it's interesting.
Yeah. And listen, I think from a television narrative point of view, we need to get a little bit more backstory on Ellie, because that's going to just color our understanding of her and her actions and her attitudes towards other things to come in the show. And I'm actually really looking forward to next week.
It's wild that after next week, there's only going to be 2 more episodes of narrative.
Yeah. It breaks. I don't even want to think about it, Rob. I don't want to think about it. That's fine. I don't want to think about, hey, in a few weeks, there's not a new episode of The Last of Us coming out. I don't want to think about that right now. All right. What's next?
From Matt Tuine, did Joel's accent change in the scenes where he was talking to Tommy? He sounded different to me.
I didn't personally pick up on. Now, I wasn't looking for it. And maybe if I was looking for it, I'd pick up something. Chris, did you detect anything as the vocal person in the group?
No, both of them do a really nice job. I mean, obviously, Gabriel's from Texas, so having a Texas twang is very natural for him. But I think Pedro Pascal did a great job. I mean, he was more emotional in a lot of these things, so he's playing with pitch a lot more. So that might have been the thing you noticed. There was a lot more of like a gruff chest voice happening at times, and then obviously hitches in his voice when he was emotional. But the accent was consistent. The dialect was great.
I thought so. But maybe if I watch it again and look for it, maybe I'll notice something. All right, what's next?
From Daniel Vacara, Joel getting stabbed made more sense than landing on a spike like the game, which marked the end of fall. I appreciate the time jump to get to winter. I mean, yeah.
The time. Yeah, look, I'll be honest with you. I was at first a little frustrated with 3 months later, because that was such an emotional climax at the end of the last episode with Henry and Sam that I almost wanted to them, because this whole show is based on emotion. So I kind of wanted to see the immediate aftermath of that. But as the episode got going and then they're having that conversation about the fire, I'm like, you know what? Again, it was the right decision. They I didn't like it at first, but I realized a little bit later it was the right decision for this. So I think you're absolutely right. All right, what's next?
From Suthius, did y'all see the camera personnel that were caught in the frame of a drone shot? It's the shot of J and E crossing the bridge as they move right. Look to the far left and you can see them. 2 spots. I did not catch that.
No, I did not.
How do you know it's not the people chasing him?
There was nobody chasing them and crossing the bridge.
Well, when they crossed the bridge, they met him right after that.
But they came up over the ridge.
But they could have been surveilled.
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, but that would kind of be like
I'm just trying to come up with an exact.
Yeah, that would kind of be like the coffee cup scene in Game of Thrones. It's like, how did that get past editorial?
Well, you know, when you're looking at something you're editing on a screen that's this big, and then when you see it on a bigger screen, sometimes if you never look at it on a bigger screen, you don't see things.
Guys, if you got any screen captures, I would love to see this. If you have a screen capture of this, go ahead and email it to me. I would love to see that. All right, what's next?
From Justin D. Now that most likely Dina has been revealed cast over under 30%, we see a cameo of Abby before the end of this season.
Look, this is a show, we've talked a lot about this, that is both ridiculously faithful to the game and takes a lot of liberties in making up new things. And as they're and I understand how it plays out, but as they were going upstairs, part of me thought when Joel opened the door and there were the monkeys inside, there was a part of me that thought we're about to meet Abby. And Now, obviously, that would be an inconsistency with
Yeah.
the game, but this show has shown it is not afraid to do things that are inconsistent with the game. And, you know, saying like, hey, listen, like, well, what's your name? Abby. Or there would have just been a quick conversation of, what are you doing? It's like, me and my group, we moved on a while ago. I had just forgotten some things. I'm not looking for any trouble, blah, blah, blah. And they finally say, okay, well, be on your way and best of luck to you. And then, by the way, what's your name? Abby. And then walk out the door. I mean, I look, I'm not saying that's what they should have done. I'm not. There was a part of my head canon that was starting to think they might do that.
I understand.
That little tease. But I think it's probably for the best that they didn't. All right, what's next?
All right, so I was able to find on CBR, there's an article up called The Last of Us Major Mistakes Spotted in Latest Episode. I will put it up here. It's not the greatest picture. Someone took a picture of their screen, but you can kind of see them by the trees right there.
Oh my God.
I can make it a little bit bigger. Well, no, I cannot. But
No,
tried.
look at the
There they
camera
are.
crew. The camera crew's right there on the left,
I don't see it.
right by the trees.
Okay, so I
Is-
see the bridge.
Okay, go directly across the bridge to the end of the frame on the left.
Oh my God, there it is. How did that get past editorial?
And look at there's people all in the tree line, all down, and there's stuff there, equipment there.
and they're all drinking Starbucks too on set. What the hell?
tons of Starbucks.
That's
wow.
actually in the episode.
But you know what? I can't be mad at them for missing it because I missed it when I was watching the show. But no, so how did somebody in editorial not catch that?
God,
That's
I mean,
funny.
And first of all, how does QC not pick that up?
Unless they did just that, nobody will notice. Because again, I didn't notice.
Wow. That's
funny.
egregious. That's just that's 1, 2, 3.
Oh my God.
Oh, you're counting. Sorry.
So no,
Never
it's
mind.
okay. It's
Sorry.
okay.
Wow,
It's
you
okay.
really
started-
hate math.
You started
Wow.
doing math, and I just totally
Oh
shut it
my
down.
God, that's funny. That is funny. All right, what's next?
From Daniel Bagara. Astronaut before.
We're gonna start with the one
Oh,
above
ooh,
it.
sorry. Thank you. No spoilers for the future, but there were so many references and locations for part 2, which was exciting
Yeah.
and unexpected. Mason said on the podcast that he was told about Ellie wanting to be an astronaut before part 2 came out, which was 3 years ago. They clearly planned on adapting part 2 from the beginning, and there's so much foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that when she's having that conversation about the astronauts and something, you know what? Sometimes they pass Joel off as, you know, he's just a brave, strong man, but he's not necessarily a smart man. But then they start listing off like astronauts, and he's rifing off names
Right.
too. So it's like, okay, but no, they did such a great job with that. And for those of you who don't know anything about the second game, that will pay off. That one little quick conversation thing will pay off. So again, the efficiency in their use of time and storytelling, they just laid like some amazing groundwork for an amazing emotional thing that's going to happen later in like 5 seconds. It was incredible. All right, what's next?
From a man, really enjoyed the episode, but I feel like the pacing was a bit off in the last bit. Everything with the university went by super quick, in my opinion. Oh, I think that's because of the gameplay aspect, maybe too. If you've played the game, it did feel very rushed.
Yeah,
I
well,
got to
'cause
that part.
once they get to the
Got to
school,
animals.
there's not a lot of narrative to tell.
No.
Right? And like, look, Mason has clearly shown in this show, narrative trumps everything else, right? If something is heavy narrative, that's what gets the time. If something it doesn't require a ton of narrative, we don't spend our time just lingering on it. So when they showed up at the university, what needed to happen? They needed to see it was abandoned. They needed to find out that they re-rallied somewhere else, and Joel needs to get injured. Those are the three things that need to happen. And they didn't need to be any longer than they
No.
were. And again, it's just, because if you had done that, then you had less time to spend on the really important stuff with character development, character building, world building, and your narrative progression. And again, Mason's been very, very clear that we're spending our time with where the narrative is. And where something doesn't take a lot of narrative, we don't spend a lot of time on it. All right, what's next?
From Sam, no disrespect to Jensen Ackles, but I'm so glad the showrunners cast Pedro Pascal. That scene with Tommy was so good. Jensen Ackles wanted to be Joel,
Yes.
but I don't think he was ever actually like really in the running. He said so himself. Where he was
Yeah,
like, I
like-
don't think I was part of the conversation, but I'd like to do it.
They
Yeah.
like it was a little bit more than just Jensen Ackles sitting at home wishing he could be it. Like they actively campaigned for it. His agents were actively after it. And you know what? especially after watching, I rewatched recently that episode from The Boys. I think it was the final episode of the season when Soldier Boy confronts Homelander. And you see him talking to him. It's like, yeah, maybe if I'd been able to raise you, but you're just a disappointment. Like, just the way he played that scene, I believe Jensen Ackles could have played a very good Joel. I really, really do. And it's tough to think about anybody else playing Joel other than Pedro Pascal because that's what we've seen. But at the end of the day, it's hard not to just believe they made the right call.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Jensen Ackles could have done a great job with it. I think we'd be loving him in this, but Pedro is just bringing something to this that is, he's bringing an X factor to it that I don't think a lot of us could have predicted. And it's just been really, really well done.
In an interview too, Jensen Ackles was like, I was pulling for Pedro Pascal.
Yeah.
So he's happy with the decision too.
Yeah. Worked out great for everybody, I think. And now, Jensen's Soldier Boy. And I'm sure
Yeah.
we're not done with him. All right. What's next?
From Brian Sanner. Everybody loves contractors.
I love that.
I love this show so much. One of my top 5 HBO series. What's yours, Rob and or John? Oh, well,
Well,
forget
first
me.
of all, that line was gold.
It was great.
Everybody loves contractors.
It
That was
was
such a great line.
and the way he set it up too. We used to build things.
Yeah,
So it was-
everybody loves contractors.
it was
That
great.
was so funny. So what was the question, though? What's our favorite HBO show? What was it?
What are your top 5 HBO
No.
series?
We don't do top fives on the spur of the moment. But, I mean, when you're looking at something like HBO, I mean, you're looking historically, too, right? You're talking Sopranos. You're talking The Wire. You're
Thrones.
I mean, it's just some of the absolute greatest television in history has all come from HBO. And every year continues to be, even this year, you're talking House of the Dragon. Now we're talking about Last of Us. I mean, or whether it's Barry or whether it's whatever, they are just always at the forefront of the best stuff on. I was about to say Seduction, Succession.
Yep. I loved Oz, but I don't know. It was great when it was
Oz
on.
was awesome.
It was awesome.
I loved Oz. That was my first exposure to J.K. Simmons.
Oh my, yeah. Oh, Schillinger. Jeez.
Yeah.
It's great stuff.
Oh, what about you, Chris? You have like one HBO show that like was your favorite of all time?
Oh, man. I'm a big Party Down fan. Like, I'm really excited
it's
about
coming
that
back,
coming
isn't it?
back. Yeah.
Oh
I
my
love
God,
Party
yeah.
Down. It's
All
great.
right. What's next?
And then I believe we were just ending with some support from Zachary Zarvos, who was in my voiceover class, and he was at your event on Saturday as
that's
well,
right. I met
on Sunday.
Zachary last night at the live event.
Hey, Zach.
And anyway, guys, that'll do it for this installment of The Last of Us Episode 6 Open Spoiler Discussion. I opened the show by talking about how I keep waiting for the week episode to happen, and it just doesn't come, and I don't see it happening anytime soon. The depressing part is we only got 3 episodes left. But anyway, guys, thank you for joining us for this installment of the Last of Us After Show. We're so glad you decided to come along. Big special thank you to you guys who sent in those super chat questions. Number 1, because you gave us great fun things to talk about. But number 2, you supported our channel as you did it. And all of us involved here, thank you guys so very much for that support. So, guys, don't forget to join us again next week for the next installment of The Last of Us After Show. Also, guys, don't forget, come on back tomorrow and join us at 10:30 Pacific Standard Time in the morning for our 2-hour daily live stream, The John Campea Show. We hope to see you guys there. So, for everybody in the room, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett, we, of course, have had Taylor Gonzalez running the switchboard. Over there has been the delightful, wonderful Chris Carr. And my name's John Campea. Thanks a lot for being here, guys. We'll see you next time. And until then, bye-bye.